We still haven't heard, of course, not yet anyway, a comprehensive strategy from the president to take on the threat. Do you think members of the Obama administration, Secretary of State Kerry, Defense Secretary Hagel, others, should testify before your committee, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to talk about the strategy? And what would you want to hear from them in order to authorize continued action against ISIS in Iraq and or strikes on ISIS in Syria?
Well, Jake, we have already called for, before the latest developments, a hearing in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the second week of this month when we return. And we have a commitment from Secretary Kerry. I do hope that Secretary Hagel will join us, because understanding the military dimensions of such a strategy is incredibly important, in addition to the political and diplomatic efforts. I think members are going to want to hear exactly how are we going to go about degrading and ultimately defeating ISIS, and what will that entail, who will join us, what will they do in the process, and how do you envision this campaign taking place? Because if it's obviously more than what we have done in Iraq to date, as it relates to protecting embassy personnel and other U.S. personnel, then it may very well need the authorization for the use of force. And of course, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has jurisdiction over that issue, as we did when we gave authorization to the use of force a year ago to the president when Syria was using chemical weapons against its people.
Your fellow Democratic Senator Bill Nelson has a bill that would give the president, quote, clear authority to order U.S. airstrikes against ISIS in Syria. Doesn't that legislation bypass the authority of your committee?
Well, any member can introduce their view of what that authorization for use of force should mean. Ultimately, it would have to come to the committee for its consideration.
Let's turn to Ukraine. You have clearly and decisively used the word invasion to describe the Russian troops entering the country, but the Obama administration is reluctant to use that word. Why do you use it, and why do you think others refrain from using it?
Well, having just come back 2 days ago from Ukraine, I can tell you that if you have thousands of Russian soldiers, columns of tanks, surface-to-surface missile, armed artillery, and a host of other sophisticated weaponry crossing from the Russian border into Ukrainian territory and fighting against Ukrainian troops, I don't know what anybody else calls it or what euphemism they want to use. To me, that's an invasion of one country against another sovereign country in a totally unprovoked way. And so I use it because I think it's important for Europe and for the United States to understand that this is a watershed moment, and that we have to decide, are we going to work to uphold the international order that Russia has so clearly violated? An international order that says you just don't simply, by force, invade another country, take territory, without serious consequences to those actions. Otherwise, the global message we send is going to be really consequential.
And you've called for the U.S. to provide lethal aid, not just non-lethal aid, to the Ukrainian army in that goal. Senator Robert Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, thank you so much.
Thank you.